Welcome to Second Listen Saturday on the Parenting Roundabout podcast, where we share some fun moments from a past episode for your weekend listening pleasure. Look for new episodes every Monday through Friday. We're going to talk about the limits of parenting. Are there limits, Catherine? Can we really not do everything? My mother was quite firm that if you worried about everything, nothing bad would happen.
Yeah, I know. She really tried hard.
Your mother and I sound like we were kindred spirits in another.
We switched at birth, yes, quite possibly.
Or twins from another mother or something.
You go.
I don't know.
There you go.
Yes, well, we all do our best at this parenting thing, or at least we try.
We like to think we do.
There's really no guarantee that, it'll work. So Terry spotted an article by a woman who's a nurse and a mom of 4, and she kind of addressed this. She wrote, "The idea that we can control our kids' behavior and not only decrease, but nearly eliminate the chances of them making a poor choice is prevalent in today's society. It's the unspoken, unacknowledged belief that fuels our parenting practices." Mm-hmm. And what we don't talk about is the fact that these interventions aren't magic. I'm still quoting from this one. The lie we tell ourselves, the lie that puts tremendous pressure on us as parents and contributes to an overall lack of empathy in society is this: if we do everything right, everything will be fine.
Yeah.
So she's trying to say, sure, good parenting practices are really great. Please don't abuse your kids.
Yes.
Please discipline them appropriately. Please read to them. Make sure they go to school, etc. But, the larger argument is we have to give ourselves room to make mistakes. Mm-hmm. So did you find this comforting, Terry? Is that what made you look at it?
I don't find it comforting, but I find it true. And, the flip side of that is that some kids are damaged by bad parenting and they have problems, but some kids come through bad parenting resiliently and then are the ones saying, my dad whipped me every day when I did something wrong and look at me, I'm just fine. And sometimes they are.
Right.
There's no black and white in this, as we often say here. Every kid is different. Every parent is different. Every family is different. And I also feel that there is less leeway in society now for kids to make mistakes and have it not be the end of the world. I think we used to know that sometimes smart kids do stupid things and good kids do bad things, and there would be some sort of framework for rectifying that. And in the sort of zero tolerance thing we have now, it doesn't seem that way. If you do something wrong, you are a terrible person and your parents were terrible people. And it's just not that way. Necessarily. Sometimes is, sometimes it's not.
Right. And it lives forever on the internet.
Exactly.
Even if it was an innocent mistake or whatever, you'll have a very hard time.
That's what it feels like.
Down.
There's just no way. And it's like, I'm parenting a kid with fetal alcohol syndrome. And one of the things that I learned about that is that in kids whose brains have been damaged by alcohol before birth, the part of the brain that has impulses and the part of the brain that knows the rules do not communicate well. So by the time the kid remembers what the rule is and wants to obey it, he has already broken it. This is an everyday reality for these kids. But I think for typical kids, when you add things like alcohol and hormones and peer pressure and adolescence to the mix, the same thing happens to them. Even when they know the rules and want to abide by the rules and think of themselves as good kids, under certain circumstances, the impulse is going to go first. And the other part of the brain is going to play catch up.
Well, it's a known fact that their decision making is not as well developed as, it's underdeveloped in those years.
Absolutely.
Fully
so I think you can sit down with your kid. You can tell them all the things that we want to tell them. You can make sure they're good citizens and know exactly what to do. But you're talking to them at a time when alcohol, hormones, and all this other crud is not in operation. When it is, you can have the best car in the world, but if the brakes go out, it's going to hit something. So you can't guard against everything. And yet I feel like we're in a society that expects you to and judges you if you don't. That's hard.
Well, Terry, unlike our past conversations, I'm going to echo what you say.
We're not going to fight. I've been feeling bad. It's like I'm disagreeing with Nicole all the time.
I had this. It's interesting that this article came out this past week. I had an email from somebody to my inclusive class email, and she was an adult working at a school and had a child that she was having difficulty working with and wanted some advice. And so she went on to give me the details and, about about what this child is doing and then everything she's doing to support the child. Because the child, is disruptive, not paying attention, like this whole checklist of all these things that the child is doing. And then she says, but I do this, and this. Therefore, this child is not wanting to learn and is affecting the learning of every other kid in the class.
Golly, I hear that a lot.
So,
yeah.
And so it kind of shocked me because, first of all, I thought, are you kidding me? And second of all, I had to sit down and write a very thoughtful yet professional email explaining to her that our children's behavior is not a direct reflection of what we do. We don't tick this checklist and okay, then yeah, they're supposed to behave because we've ticked off all the checks.
Yeah.
But it's rooted in other issues, like you said, with your you're parenting a child with FAS. And this child could have ADHD, could have trauma-related issues in their life, could have neglect. I mean, there's so many things that influence our children and that we don't see sometimes as parents. Like you said, the drugs, the alcohol, the peer pressure.
Yeah.
Our kids are away from us all day at school.
Right.
Come home with this baggage of stuff.
Yeah.
And then we wonder why they get mad at us when we go ask them to go tidy their room.
That's right. Yes. Yes. The delayed response is a big deal. That they overreact over one thing. You don't know all the things that have happened. I mean, in school, a lot of the times, if they've had a bad bus ride and all sorts of bad things have happened, and then they seem to go off for no reason at all. But it's only no reason at all because you just saw them.
Don't know the reason.
Right. You don't know the history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also the, when you said delayed reaction, it made me think of say when my kids were much younger and they were in preschool or maybe early elementary grades, and you get a behavior, notice from the school. And it's like, okay, but if I do or say anything about this hours later, that has no effect at all. You gotta be able to deal with this as it happens.
Yeah.
I mean, I sympathize. I don't want my child to misbehave, but I'm not sure how to address it way after the fact.
That is very hard.
It's challenging. And I remember reading somewhere when I was teaching, I taught in inner city schools for the most part. And I remember reading that after a child experiences some form of trauma, their brain and their systems, they need about 48 hours to come down from that event in order to be open to learning or what, is happening in the positive things that's happening in the environment around them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, Catherine, even if you were to say something to your son or your child, or if anybody was to say anything, to their child after school about an event that happened, they're probably not even listening anyway.
Yeah.
Right. And think about kids who are experiencing that trauma regularly. I mean, they never get to recover.
And on an intense level. And so it was kind of a given at our school that on Mondays, we did not present any real new material or have any real intent, testing, or we gave them a day to decompress at school. And then we kind of amped up our programs midweek. But, so it's taking all this stuff. I mean, even though you're running or not running, but you're doing the parenting thing quite well. Like you feel like you're doing things well at home. You don't know what's going on outside of the house or what is happening in them internally and the struggles that they're having inside.
And if you're sending a message of, I have done all the right things, therefore you will be a perfect child, you're pretty much assuring they're not going to come home and tell you if they're having a problem.
Oh, yeah.
So it's pressure on them too. And this idea that kids are like a smartphone game where if you do all the things right, you go on to the next level and everything, it's like, it's not that, they're not just something that if you push all the right buttons, a predictable outcome happens.
Yeah, right. That's what always drives me crazy about parenting advice, expert advice. Say X and the result is Y. Like, okay, you come try it.
It's like, if you go to Barnes & Noble, there are like 2 aisles worth of parenting books. If there was one easy answer, they would just give us all the book at the maternity ward and say, here, this is it.
And you'll be all good.
All children are exactly the same. Have a good time. If something goes wrong, it's your fault.
I think a good takeaway from the conversation is if your child is acting out, stop and ask them why, rather than immediately, kind of
assume they're doing it on purpose to be bratty.
Right.
Yeah, just kind of stop and ask why and get the background story first.
Right.
Because, in our head, we're checking off the list and they should be performing accordingly.
But also to take some of the pressure off of everybody. I mean, teachers are going to assume that if there's a problem, it's because the kid is not being treated right at home, not being disciplined right, or being traumatized at home. Parents are going to assume it's the teachers. It could be something completely different. It could be kids being traumatizing to other kids.
Could be an undiagnosed medical issue.
It could be all sorts of different things. And once you put up the walls and say, well, I've done everything, so therefore it's somebody else's fault, you're never going to find out what the thing is. Well,
remember, I don't know where, this is another quick little aside too that kind of supports our conversation, but I don't know if this ever happened with you and your kids, but when my daughter was a baby, there was one particular day that she was just fussing a lot, like just lots and lots of fussing going on. And I, check her diaper and feed her and burp her and try and put her to bed. And she just was not having any of it, right? It was just one of those horrible days.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I suffered all day. And at the end of the night, I'm giving her a bath so that she can go to bed. And I take off her little onesie and a little string is curled around her toe. So it's like, okay, another classic example of all this behavior was for a reason. It wasn't because I was, it wasn't being fixed because I was changing the diaper and feeding her and burping her. And it was something totally different.
Yeah.
that was affecting her behavior. But yeah.
And as our kids get older, those get harder to find. But it's still oftentimes there's a string somewhere.
There is a string. Look for the string around the toe.
Look for that darn string. That is our title of our parenting advice book.
Look for the string.
Look for the string.
Look for the string.